So often, I only hear the word transphobia used in the context of microaggressions and accidentally missed pronouns. And I think it leaves me, and perhaps a lot of other people, with the impression that there is no such thing as true transphobia. Like, it's lost so much meaning as a word because it's thrown around so often that nobody really knows what it is or what it actually looks like. Hello, everyone. So right away, I have a big thank you for all the people who found my tip jar. I leave a tip jar in my description in my videos, and somebody found it and left a tip. In fact, a few somebodies. And I'm very grateful. Thank you very much to everybody who did that. Also, the number of people who are subscribing, I don't know where you guys are all coming from, but again, like, that number has been going up, and I'm very, very grateful. Thank you to everybody who is new to the channel, and thank you to everybody who's coming back. I don't know why you keep coming back, but there's something very reassuring when I see that number going up. It's like, okay, maybe I'm not wasting my time after all, so that's always really cool. So thank you to everybody who's been leaving tips, who've been subscribing, who's been clicking like on all my videos. Like, thank you. It really makes a difference. It means a lot to me. It gives me some feedback, which I appreciate. And let's get to the video. So a couple days ago, this thing happened, and I'm trying to figure out a way to say everything that happened as concisely as possible. Yes, there is a point to all this. Now, the title of this video is going to be, something along the lines of, does transphobia really exist? Let's get into that, because, yeah, short answer, yes, it does. What does this mean? Why is this? And, there's some important things that I feel like I should talk about at the end of this video. But let me just show you guys what happened. So about a week ago, I posted this video. It was about the whole non-binary cloud versus technical terms like autoandrophile, autogynephile. I'm thinking that the way the conversation is going, things like autogynephile in particular are going to be words that you guys are going to be hearing more and more if you're paying any attention to the transgender conversation. Just the other day, Buck Angel did an interview and they talked about autoandrophilia, and that's kind of the reason that I'm making this video, because there are things that need to be said, there are things that need to be discussed. This is a technical term. It needs to be discussed. I'm an autoandrophile, and I kind of want to do a response to this video because, they hit some very important points. Autoandrophile, autogynephile, not the same as the non-binary, gender fluid, all the multiple genders. There's actually a gender wiki, so if you want to laugh, go on the gender wiki and look up some of the weird, obscure, cooked up genders. Like, there was one, and I can't remember what exactly it was called, but I think it was like literally Waldorf salad gender. Somebody with the personality of a Waldorf salad, and your gender is not your personality. So I don't know. I struggle with the mindset, but it was interesting, definitely. The gender wiki, by the way, absolutely refuses to acknowledge the existence of either autoandrophilia or autogynephilia, but that's just kind of furthering the argument that they're very different things. That's what that video was about. I posted it on YouTube, of course, and then I shared the YouTube link over on Minds. Minds is pretty right-wing. Now, when Minds first started up, I joined because I heard that it was all about free speech. And I like that concept. I tend to talk about very controversial subjects. I talk about abortion. I talk about transgender issues. These are kind of controversial. I never know whose toes I'm going to step on next when I'm talking about these things. And so I try to be very, very careful. I tend to piss off people on both sides of the fence. So obviously when talking about abortion issues, I pissed off a lot of lefties. I pissed off a lot of righties. I don't know if there are clear divides of all left people must be pro-life or pro-choice and all right people must be pro-life. But you get the idea. I pissed everybody off. I made everybody angry. And transgender topics, I looked at it, was like, okay. I was very, very nervous when I started because I was like, I think sooner or later I'm going to say the wrong thing, and I'm going to have a frothing cancel mob of angry, woke individuals sending me tons and tons of hate messages and shit, and, death threats and whatnot. And it will be because I said, somewhere along the lines, I said the wrong thing, and somebody finally found it. And it's going to be messy. And so I post a lot of my content over on Minds because it's like, well, let's show some of these a little bit more controversial, a little bit more questioning the main narrative kinds of ideas in a place where presumably there's a free exchange of ideas. That's what free speech is all about. Free speech is about liberating people to exchange ideas in an unhindered fashion, because talking, speech, that's all a mode of communicating ideas back and forth. So having freedom of speech is actually very important, because if you limit that, you limit the ability of individuals to exchange ideas in a way that is straightforward and efficient. Okay, cool. I like this. And when I first got onto Minds, it was kind of exciting. It was kind of fun. There were a lot of different people on Minds. I remember the one that stands out to me the most was this guy who was a nudist. And he was like an older nudist, but he was like very committed to, being a nudist. And he thought it was like just this really important part of his life. And he, went to nudist hangouts with a bunch of other nudists and occasionally posted pictures of himself, which, I'd be scrolling through my feed and I'd see him and I'd be like, whoa, okay, hey bud, how you doing? Whoa, all right. But at the same time, like, there was something kind of cool about the fact that I was encountering all these really different, varied people who had these kind of fringy lives that they were living, and I was excited about that. It was like, I'm meeting a lot of different folks here, and there's really no restriction on what people can say. So people are discussing a lot of things, and some of it was like straight up tinfoil hat stuff. There was a lot of tinfoil hat stuff, and it's like, okay, so you got to get through the tinfoil hat stuff, but you can find some really cool stuff here. Like, it's kind of like going to a big box store versus going to a garage sale. I mean, yeah, the big box store is neat and organized and orderly, and everything's in like aisles that have labels on them. But when you go to the garage sale, you can find some weird stuff and these dusty antiques with all these interesting little knobs and gadgets, and it's you never know what you're going to find. And so, it's this really interesting contrast, and so I loved it at first. And then life happened, and I stopped going. I was busy, I was working, I had things going on, and I spent a few years away from Minds. And then I came back. It feels like an echo chamber now. Like, it really does. I'll be scrolling through and I'll see the same types of posts again and again and again and again and again, and it's like, I can't even tell who's posting what anymore half the time, because it's always the same content, it's always the same messages, and it's just there really doesn't seem to be a diversity of thought anymore. That cool nudist that I met, he's gone. Like, all the really wild people, like one person was like a weed farmer, they're gone. They're all gone. Where did they go? It seems like now it's a very right-wing, uniform, really only one train of thought kind of group of people. And I mean, I'll go and visit it once in a while just because that way I can see a really different viewpoint. But I feel like I'm stepping into an echo chamber every time. It's not fun anymore. Why has Minds become so echo chambery? And I think that part of the reason is because Minds is a free speech platform. There's a certain degree of just anything goes there. And while that Wild West kind of freedom can be cool, it's also very attractive to the kind of people who are just looking for a fight. It's really a great place for trolls. Like, if you're a troll and you get kicked off of YouTube, and you get kicked off of Twitter, and you get kicked off of TikTok, and you get kicked off of like all the other big, sites, all the other social media stuff, you can go to Minds. And no one's going to kick you off of there for the most part. And so a lot of these people end up going to Minds, and then they're really happy. They're like, yay, free speech! But I think they kind of neglect the whole idea that the point of having free speech, the whole deep value of having free speech, is that it creates an unencumbered free exchange of ideas. And if you don't have that, honestly, it really devalues speech as a whole. Like, yes, you've got free speech. Congratulations. You're yelling insults at each other across the internet, and no communication is actually occurring. Like, I find myself almost banging my head on a wall, like, what's the point of free speech if nobody's actually communicating anything? And I understand free speech, still valuable, all that. But I've had several times now on Minds, especially increasingly in recent years, where I'll go on and some person doesn't like something I said, and so they decide, at first it was because I was talking about abortion. It's like, oh, you're a baby killing whore. It's like, okay, fine, I don't see how I was supposed to avoid that situation. It was an extreme medical problem that a hospital's ethics board had to sign off on because the circumstances were very extreme. But if you want to tell me that I'm a whore, even though I got pregnant with my husband because we wanted to have a baby, if you want to call me a whore and you want to say that I'm a baby killer, whatever, But, I thought those people were bad, and now I'm experiencing this. And it's happened to me on a few occasions, and it's like, this is something else. This is interesting. Like, this is actually quite fascinating, because it's amazing how much a human being can shut their brains off and still be talking. So I posted this video, and right away I got a comment. Like, in my comment section on YouTube itself, I got this comment, and I'm going to read it for you guys.
Y'all came up with this nonsense. It's not at all rooted in reality. If you glob onto the trans agenda, you need lots of psychotherapy drugs because you are mentally ill, severely mentally ill. 10 years ago, to be trans was a mental fucking illness. And now, all of a sudden, people like you have weaseled your way into the world. You are an infection. You are the definition of weakness. Everything that is wrong with the world is because of fucking you. And the best thing is, the world's not buying it. The world's not buying the bullshit you're fucking peddling.
This is only a screenshot that she sent me on Minds. YouTube automatically deleted this. It didn't even inform me about this. And YouTube does that. If it senses that a comment is offensive, and I think that the number of times she used the word fucking, plus the you are an infection statement, I think all of that probably triggered like some sort of bot in YouTube's programming, and it got deleted right away. Unfortunately, I guess it did appear visibly for a little while before the bot got to it, because other people responded to it. And I know this because maybe not this particular comment, but some of the comments she left. And I know that because of this screenshot that I took.
So she said, your children are in real danger because you're teaching them this dense bullshit. And I replied, you have no idea what I teach my children. And then someone else added, your children are in danger because you're not yet taking a dirt nap. And then at some later point, the second person said, your comment made no sense. I'm literally treating you the way you're treating oat leaves. That's the law of attraction, my friend. No one's deleting your comments. We want them to remain as a testament to your intractable insolence. Which unfortunately suggests that she left multiple comments, all of which got deleted.
I'm pretty sure it was the YouTube bot, because if you use curse words really heavily, YouTube will delete your comments. I mean, even me, like, I have to be very careful because I discuss controversial sexual matters, and so if I use sometimes even just the accurate sexual terminology, YouTube will still delete my comments sometimes, and so I have to be very, very careful. I was having a conversation about porn the other day with someone, and it's like, okay, how do I talk about pornography without this comment getting deleted? And finally I was like, okay, I'll say erotic films and see if that goes across. Like, gotta risk it. That's YouTube. That's one of the unpleasant parts of navigating YouTube. This lady assumed that I was deleting all of these. And I wasn't even being notified of half of these comments. Like, I don't know the exchange that she had with this other person. I don't know what all she was saying. And I'm assuming these comments were getting deleted for reasons. Like, I don't think that they were just, I don't think that they were just getting deleted because YouTube is spiteful. I think, and I mean, I know that because later on she was on Minds complaining about how she can't update her profile page because YouTube is unfairly harassing and targeting her. And it's like, well, YouTube will eventually put a hold on your comments and your statements if you've said too many really offensive things in too short of a period of time. They do that. Again, it's not a free speech platform, and there are problems with that, but, I don't exactly understand what the benefit of you are an infection, fuck, is to any kind of discourse anyway. But anyway, I was kind of disappointed because I got notified that there were some comments that they got deleted, and I get frustrated with that because I want to see what people have to say to me. Like, I do actually want to know what people are saying, and so I get irritated with YouTube. I'm like, come on. Like, why are you deleting these comments? Like, what? Come on, YouTube, stop that. And so I complained about it online. So I was like, apparently some person is saying some stuff to me, and YouTube is deleting it. I think at one point she did post a message that she was going to share screenshots, and I was like, you know what? I really hope she does. I don't know how she will, but I hope she does because I want to see what this individual had to say. Well, lo and behold, she actually did share the screenshots, which is how I have that portion of the comment. Now it cuts off because she only shared the stuff that she had screenshotted. That's all I have. But I think we all get the idea. And I took that screenshot and I posted it up on my page, and I was like, yeah, she actually shared it, which is really cool. And I thanked her. And then I said, yeah, but I'm kind of disappointed because I thought you'd have something a little more substantial. Left it at that. Probably a little bit bitchy of me, probably a little bit passive aggressive, and sometimes it's a good way for me to let off that extra aggression, like, oh, really, you're gonna say something completely asinine to me? Pook. Well, she went off the rails. Like, she went off the rails. And so she took this post that I did. It was one of the very first, it is, in fact, I think the very first things I ever posted on Minds about transgender issues. And I thought at the time, this is actually a really good way to dip my toe in the water of transgender subjects. I understand a lot of left-leaning people, if they see this, if they see me talking about trans issues, they're going to get really riled up really fast. So I want to be very careful. I want to be very tactful. I want to be very considerate of all the different viewpoints that are out there because there's some really strong viewpoints, and I want to take those into account and be sensitive to where people are coming from. I tried really hard to think of a way to communicate something that would be, relatively inoffensive, and I came up with this, and I thought that this was clever because they've always got the trans pride flags, and they're always saying save trans kids, and they're always advocating for we need to do puberty blockers, and we need to do early transitions, and we need to do this, and we need to do that. And I decided to turn that whole message on its head and say, save trans kids, stop medicalizing children. Because if you really care about trans kids and you really want to save trans kids, don't give them puberty blockers. There is a growing body of medical evidence that puberty blockers cause some really substantial harm to children. Substantial harm. And, this recent study that came out is horrifying. Puberty blockers lower your IQ an average of 7 points. And I understand they used a small sample size for this study, but at the same time, holy crap, man. One girl in the study, she lost 15 IQ points due to the use of puberty blockers. That's massive. That's massive, you guys. That poor child. Like I look at the bone issues, and I mean, I've had people who have come to me on YouTube and said, hey, puberty blockers are actually really beneficial. And I look at it and it's like, okay, you're telling me this, and I'm kind of excited that you're telling me this because a lot of people in the world believe this. And so if you're open to talking to me, I want to have that discussion. So you're saying puberty blockers are beneficial. I am very willing to listen to you on that. However, my very first question is going to be, do the benefits that are yielded up by puberty blocker use in children, do those benefits outweigh the long-term cost, the development of very, very early onset osteoporosis, the loss of bone density, the broken bones, the physiological crippling of these children? Like, if you tell me it's worth it, I'm willing to hear out your explanation for why it's worth it. I think that's a discussion that actually does really desperately need to take place. If you think it's worth it to be giving children puberty blockers, I want to hear why. I want to understand. That's why I'm having this discussion. I want to understand. And they never reply to me. Like, I try to word it as carefully as possible. I try to be as gentle as possible. It's like, I want to have this discussion. I'm very open to the possibility that puberty blockers could be a good thing. I'm trying really hard to be open-minded, but I'm concerned, as I think any person should be, any parent, any child, any care provider would be concerned by these very alarming medical consequences for the use of these medications. And that was before I knew about the IQ thing. It's like IQ just jumps it up to a whole nother level. Like, in my opinion, like, it's just one more layer of, oh my God, this is horrifying. How are we doing this to children? So, that was my very first post. Put it up there. I pinned it at the very top. I was like, if I have to find one issue in the trans debate, this is one that I genuinely stand behind. And so, again, take the message, turn it on its head. Save trans kids? Yeah, let's save trans kids. Let's save them from these freaking puberty blockers. Let's save them from these surgeries that they might not be ready to consent to. Let's save them from childhood sterilization. Let's save them from this medical model that is the affirmative care model. And then it was like, okay, what if somebody reads that and they just don't get it? Because sometimes people just don't get it. And so I put in the caption, like I put underneath that picture, this description. If a kid comes out and they say, Mom, Dad, I'm trans, they might just be a normal kid who's confused. That's very possible, especially these days with ROGD. And people don't want to use the term ROGD. Please come up with a better term and give it to me. I will use that term instead. There's a lot of kids coming out saying that they're trans. What do you call that? You call it a lot of kids coming out saying they're trans. Okay, fine, whatever. Could be a normal kid. Could very well be a gay kid, a lesbian kid. A lot of that going on. That's been going on for a really long time. A lot of these gay and lesbian kids, because they've done studies, and I got a lot of flack for this because people were like, well, everyone's gender nonconforming in some way, so you're just wrong. They did studies of kids that showed up at a gender clinic who were extremely gender nonconforming. Trans kids, right? And when they did the study, they found that the majority of them eventually settled into their bodies, kind of adapted and acclimated, and grew up to be gay or lesbian. So, they didn't need to transition. They didn't need medicalization. They didn't need to change their pronouns. They didn't need all their shit. It was just the fact that a lot of gay children, when they're young, they're gender nonconforming. It happens. So just leave the kids alone. Let them be kids. Let them grow up, right? And then there is that very, very small cohort of children who do eventually grow up and they become trans adults. And then they would look back on their lives and say, well, yeah, I was a trans kid. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, you were gender nonconforming as a kid, and you felt very strongly that you were the opposite gender, and now you're an adult and you've transitioned, and so I'm not going to pretend that those people aren't, trans kids. However, since you can't pick the trans kid out of a lineup of other kids who are either claiming to be trans or thinking that they're trans or having, gender confusion of some sort or another, you can't pick that kid out of a lineup. We don't have the ability to do that. We don't have the know-how to do that. We don't have the psychological testing to do that. We can't do that. So you cannot start just randomly medicating children willy-nilly and saying, oh, well, we're going to hit the right kid sooner or later. Like, that's reckless. That's medically reckless. I don't know any other way to describe that. So again, I have this little description. I think that communicates the idea concisely. I think I'm good. This was months ago I posted this damn thing. Well, this lady, she's pissed off because I deleted her YouTube comments that I never even saw. And so she takes this post and she reposts it with this charming description.
Thank God I didn't come up in 2020 or later. I was a super big tomboy as a child. Thank God this person wasn't my parent, because they would have taken my tomboyishness as a signal to transition me into a boy. Even if the sexually perverted parent waited until the child reached sexual maturity to transition them, it would still have been a literal lifetime of tranny-positive propaganda. The parent fed the child to convince them that the parent's lifestyle was normal, when it was not. It is not biologically sound either. If your way of life was to take hold without medical intervention, no one would procreate, thus forcing us into a worldwide depopulation. Girls aren't boys, and vice versa. Women aren't men, and vice versa. There is no such thing as a transgender kid. They are impressionable youths who were persuaded into a dangerous and unhealthy lifestyle by their perverted parents.
And a bunch of people are like, the usual occurrences happen. And of course, because of this conversation, she's saying that my followers are insisting that she killed herself and that she's being targeted and that she's being harassed and all this stuff. And I'm sitting there thinking, that seems a little bit cry-bullyish of you, but, I don't know what all exchanges were made because, again, YouTube deleted the comments before I could see what was actually being said, which is really damn annoying, but whatever. So maybe they were calling for her to kill herself. This is the only screenshotted comment that seemed to have anything to do with her being dead. And it's not even telling her that she should die. It's just saying, a response to what she said to me. A sarcastic response to what she said to me. Maybe not the most appropriate response, but still. And I'm seriously getting kicked in the ribs a lot. So forgive me for a second. Oh, wow, at this camera angle, I look even more massive than I actually am. Damn, I look huge. Anyway, so she's got all these people who are like, oh my God, this person is sick, this person is twisted. And this is just a sampling because there were over 100 messages. And, I couldn't keep track of them all. It was a barrage. And so, these are some of the choice pieces, but there was definitely more. There was so much that I didn't actually get to read through all of it. So this is just some of the delightful things that people had to say. Some of the more colorful things that people had to say.
And here she says, here's a tip. If you want to share nasty, sexually perverse videos about fantastical sexual identities, first and fucking most importantly, don't tell anyone about your kids. Okay, she clearly doesn't realize that I've been making videos for years and that, I started off with my abortion videos, which was all about me having kids, but whatever. Don't post it in a forum where anyone might disagree with you unless you are prepared for the backlash, which obviously you were not. Well, I wasn't expecting someone to go absolutely batshit insane on me, but whatever. Don't try to use big words, especially if you aren't really sure what they mean. Because tits to dicks, the person you're trying to insult is way smarter than your tranny ass. Bitch, I'd like to take this opportunity to go ahead and say I think I'm smarter than you based just on the way you've behaved yourself in this conversation alone. 4. Don't try to justify your nasty lifestyle trying to suggest you're all about children's autonomy and safety when you post about trans/gay/bisexual children even existing. In order for children to understand this element of sexuality, they will have to have been molested or raped. Lastly, please go fuck yourself and turn your children over to a non-perverse caretaker. And this was actually a recurring theme in a lot of her comments. She kept on talking about me and how perverse she assumed my lifestyle was, even though she doesn't know a thing about my lifestyle. And then talking about my kids, which I don't appreciate. I kind of try to keep a barrier between my public life and my private family life. And this lady seemed way too fucking entitled to know about my kids' private life. And that's the point at which it's like, bitch, go and fuck yourself. Seriously. You have no business knowing what's going on with my children. You know they exist. I've never hidden the fact that they exist, but don't you fucking dare get in their business. That's mine. Penis that she sent me for reasons that I can't fathom any more than you can. Here she is trying to clean up her image by posting this after a few people called her out on, targeting me the way she was. It honestly seems pretty weak-assed after she and another guy went around talking about me as it for a while. And in case you missed that screenshot, here it is for a second round. But here she is in the comment section of that very comment talking with that same guy about how much they hate trannies and what they wish they could get away with doing to us. And of all the things that we talked about, I think this is the most hilarious part of the entire thing, so I'm going to read this out to you. She said, "So glad you brought this over to an uncensored site. No nanny admins to save you from mean comments or factual content. Stop peddling your nonsense. Men can't be women. Women can't be men. Biology matters. I would hope you'd teach your kids about that, but I'd bet all the money I had that you teach them this genderless bullshit." To which I replied, "You didn't watch the video, did you? Missed the multiple parts where I talked about how I can't escape my biological reality, so I'm just going to focus on living the best life I can? Like, it seriously sounds like if you did watch the video, you didn't hear anything I said. You just heard what you expected to hear." So she says, "Cool story, bro. I couldn't take your video after you said you have children. It's child abuse to teach your children they need to mutilate their bodies to experience sexual pleasure." So yeah, apparently this whole shitstorm that she started up was because some of her comments got deleted by YouTube, and she saw me and my videos, and I guess she thought, I found a tranny, and that's the only thing she thought. She didn't take the time to see what I was talking about. She didn't take the time to see if maybe I was saying anything useful. She didn't give a shit what I said. All she cared about is, I found a tranny and I'm going to punish her. Only thing going through her mind. And here's a message she sent me that says, "Would you look at that? I found a photo of you from your last children's event." And once again, she is being weird and obsessive about me and my kids and my family in ways that are absolutely inappropriate. 100% inappropriate. And she's just perfectly okay with telling everyone that I'm a child molester, a pedophile. At one point she suggested, and I couldn't find the screenshot for this because it was everywhere, like hundreds of messages. At one point she suggested that I was sexually trafficking children. And again, just wildly, wildly inappropriate because apparently I'm a tranny, and she was just so goddamn excited to find a real live tranny that she could just go on a full-blown smear campaign against. And this is just her. This isn't even the conversations that I had with some of the other people who were trying their darndest to convince me that I was delusional. It's ridiculous.
She's making all these accusations against me that really don't have anything to do with me. And I'm telling her that these things don't have anything to do with me, and it doesn't seem to really be making a dent, and she's just going off. God, this is not a flattering camera angle, but I can breathe, and so it's worth it. But yeah, there was a gal on Facebook who did this to me, and it was just mind-blowing to me. There are people who seem to think that sending a bunch of sarcastic GIFs and sarcastic memes is a good substitute for a well-thought-out argument. And it fucking blows my fucking mind. Like, the one girl on Facebook, she had a doctorate. She had a flipping doctorate. And she's sending me all these sarcastic GIFs to prove her point. And I'm looking at it and it's like, this is not a well-reasoned argument. Like, you're very upset, clearly, and you're hurling a lot of accusations at me, and you're jumping from point to point so fast that you're not actually giving me a chance to give any kind of a logical response to the things you're saying. You're very, very, very emotional about all this, but I'm not seeing any thinking going on. You have a PhD. I have a high school diploma. You know, between the two of us, people would assume that you were the smarter person, but you're not actually engaging your mind. What's the point of the big fancy degree on the wall if you don't use it? Use your freaking mind. Human beings are the smartest animals on the frickin' planet. Use your mind. Please. We're on a frickin' website called Minds. Minds, like as in thinking with the thinky parts of your brain, and people are like acting like this, and I'm like, okay. And the thing is, just for clarity's sake, not everybody on Minds is like that. Not everybody on Minds glomped on and started getting like really emotional about this. Not everybody automatically assumed that I'm some sort of pedophile. I actually ended up having some really pleasant discussions with some people who, they disagree with me, but at least they were willing to put into words why they disagreed with me. And a lot of it was misunderstandings. A lot of it was about this flag. I think that they saw the term trans kids and they thought, she believes that trans kids is a thing, whereas I was kind of making a joke of it all, like, if you really believe in taking care of kids that you think are trans, don't transition them. This is not a good route. Like, I don't think it's a good route, right? And I think that the subtlety of that message really got lost on a lot of people. And so there was a lot of that conversation. And they still think that I'm wrong, but, whatever. It was the very first thing I ever posted on the issue, and I'm not taking it back. I'm not sorry. I'm not apologizing. I thought it was a very clever way to handle a very controversial and very delicate statement. Now, since the time that I made that post, cool enough, the World Health Organization has gone through and said, hey, we're not going to have these regulations for, transition children. There's some conflicting evidence, and so we're not going to advocate for that. And that is just the coolest thing ever. That's a big thing. World Health Organization is kind of a big organization, a kind of public organization. You can like the World Health Organization, you can dislike the World Health Organization, but the fact alone that the World Health Organization is saying, hey, we should maybe dial it back with these kids, that's a huge thing. That's a major win. That's my husband. I think we've made some real progress. I suspect it's going to be one of those, 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of things where we're going to be really, really excited. The World Health Organization did this, yay, win for us, and then it's going to slide back because it'll be like there are going to be a bunch of very well-funded activists who are going to be like, well, this is horrible for kids, and how could you do this, and you're bending to the pressure of, right-wing extremists and blah-de-blah, and they're going to say that, and then the World Health Organization is going to be like, well, maybe we can do a little bit of transition for kids. And again, I want to say this for anybody watching my video who's like, well, puberty blockers aren't that bad. Talk to me. Let's have that conversation, The World Health Organization themselves says there was conflicting information. I want to hear the other side of this story. I want to have both of those arguments in my mind so that I can kind of weigh them up against one another. I'm not trying to catch you. I'm not trying to get you in a gotcha moment. I really genuinely want to understand every angle of this debate. I have serious concerns about medicalizing children. I even have serious concerns about transitioning children when they're young, so changing their pronouns, all that. I think it creates a lot of pressure on kids. These are so easy to fiddle with. I think it creates a lot of pressure on kids to continue the process of transition, because if their parents go to the trouble of changing their pronouns and going to the school and saying, okay, little Johnny is a she, her now, it does put a little bit, just even the slightest bit of pressure on a child. And I think that can really affect their decision making in ways that might not necessarily be entirely beneficial to them. And so I strongly advise caution, but I want to hear the other side of that argument. And the thing I'm not getting from where I'm standing right here is the other side of that argument. Because people start talking to me, and this is not something I expected. Like, I got the right-wing hate mob, on my computer right here. I got it. I've got screenshots. I'm going to share those with you. I'm going to narrate over them because some of them are just fucking funny. It's hilarious, right? It is absolutely hilarious, the things that people have said to me. But what I have not gotten, and what really surprised me that I haven't gotten it, and maybe it's just coming down the road. Maybe it's just going to be a matter of time, and then one of these days I'm going to get that angry left-wing hate mob just filling up my inbox with bullshit. Maybe that's going to happen, but it hasn't happened yet. What I have had has been a lot of people who've come to me and they've said, hey, puberty blockers are actually a good thing. And I'm like, okay, let's have that discussion, because I want to understand that side of the argument, and I'm not hearing that side of the argument, because the moment I pull out, hey, what about the 12-year-olds with osteoporosis? What about, again, this new drop in IQ is alarming. What about that? What do we do about that? And it's not even necessarily let's just stop the puberty blockers. Let's find a better alternative. Let's find a good way to move forward so that children who are suffering from gender confusion have good care. What does that world look like? What kind of a picture can we draw of a good world where kids get good care? What does that look like when they're gender confused? What do you think that looks like? Let's dream up a better world for ourselves. Let's have that conversation, please. That conversation needs to take place. I'm not a child psychologist. I'm not an expert. I'm trying to listen to as many experts as I can, and I'm hearing a lot of different points and a lot of different ideas, and I'm trying to put those all together in one big gooey ball and understand, affirmative care has some serious problems. What do we replace that with? And what is that going to look like? This is an important conversation that needs to be had. In an ideal world, what do we create to replace affirmative care? Now, affirmative care, I think, in many ways was created with an ideal world in mind. I've had a few people who've said, affirmative care is wonderful because affirmative care does this and affirmative care does that and affirmative care does the other thing. And that's great in theory, but then in practice, when you take affirmative care and you apply it to people, is it really hitting those marks? Is it really doing what people want it to be doing? And I think the answer to that question is no. Transgender people deserve better. Gay children absolutely deserve better. Children who are confused, who are struggling with mental illnesses, who have problems at home, who are, kind of outcast and need a place to fit in. Children who have problems, who are looking at it and saying, maybe it's my gender. They need something better than what they are currently being given. They need that. And we as a society need to give them that. As a layperson, I sit here and say, okay, well, what would that look like? I'm gonna read through some of these things that people are saying to me because they're just hilarious, and then I'm gonna get back to you because I'm just gonna go over the screenshots.
So I don't want to waste you guys' time with a bunch of just random conversations that I had on the internet, but this was one of the most gaslighty conversations I've ever had with anyone in my entire life, and it was just remarkable for that reason alone. At this point, we had been talking for a while, and she was telling me that all these people who were posting memes and, pictures of artificial penises and things like that, they were doing it to humiliate me and laughing at me. And I was like, well, yeah, I know that they're trying to humiliate me, but how can anyone humiliate someone when they're constructing a straw man and then tearing it down? Nothing that they've posted about me is actually about me. And I think in some weird way she was trying to help me, because she was at least using a helpful tone, but at the same time, she's making a lot of assumptions about me, quite a lot of assumptions. And it's honestly pretty hilarious to read through her comments, because she's talking about a person that I have absolutely nothing in common with. Here she's telling me that the term autoandrophilia is just another way of saying a person who feels cool by identifying as a woke victim. And I tried to explain to her already once before that autoandrophilia is not a made-up term, it's an actual term. And her response was, whatever.
And I'm back. Hi, everybody. So, all of this insanity dropped into my inbox, and it was interesting. It was very interesting. I don't get emotional about these things. I do get miffed. I get annoyed when people mischaracterize me so greatly. So I mean, I got annoyed, but it's an irritation. You didn't hurt my feelings, okay? But I look at all of this, and going back to the title of this video, is transphobia even a real thing? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. We're seeing it. This is what it looks like. Here you go, folks. Transphobia. You got your transphobia. It's right there. Where did it come from? That's the important question. Where did it come from? Because these people are saying, I'm so sick of these trannies. I'm so sick of your kind coming in and shoving your ideology down our throats. I'm not really very aligned with the trans ideology, in case anyone has noticed. Like, I'm kind of just asking questions and trying to figure out what the hell's going on, and I don't really like ideology all that much. I try not to fall into those pre-aligned kinds of thinking patterns, because I think it limits and stifles my thought, and it limits and stifles my awareness, and I don't like that very much. But, I look like one of them. I'm not even... There's so many trans people who would not say that I'm a trans person, because I'm never going to transition. I'm an autoandrophile, right? I'm trying to facilitate a logical, reasoned conversation. That's what I want. That's where my interests lie. That's it. That's the point of all this. All these people who are really, really mad at me, who are attacking me, who are calling me a pedophile and me a child groomer and me all these things, all these people with their little pitchforks and their torches and all their anger, they're angry at me because they've seen the way that the trans ideological movement is acting. They can't go after big name people, They can't really even find many trans people on Minds, because anybody with any common sense who's trans, who's on Minds, is just going to get out of there eventually, because it's an echo chamber and people hate trans people there, right? But when they find me, looks trans enough, let's get her! Minds is a tiny, tiny percentage of the population of the world. It's a drop in a great ocean. I think in many ways, the people on Minds with their little echo chamber and their free speech rah-rah that they never actually used to communicate anything daring or anything controversial, anything that questions their preformed assumptions about the world. They're a remarkably powerless group of small people. And some of them are nice people. I'm not afraid of the people on Minds, but I'm afraid of what I am seeing in them. And I want to take all of that and I want to put it in light of this video that came out yesterday that was, I think, a very important video. It was a very important conversation. Definitely go watch that video. They say things that are important that need to be said. But if you're going to open that Pandora's box, if you're going to have that conversation, and I think we need to, we're definitely there, we need to have that conversation. If you're going to do that, we have to be willing to use nuanced thought in that conversation. We can't paint people with a broad brush when we're having that conversation. Are there some very twisted, messed up, perverted people out there in the world? Absolutely there are. Have we seen them in action? We absolutely have. We are seeing right now some very, very disturbing things happen in our society. They need to be addressed. And the thing with trans, the trans umbrella, the trans cloud, is that people who want to take advantage of very unfair circumstances in ways that are honestly unspeakable are doing so. The people on the right, they warned about this. They said, we don't want this because people are going to take advantage of it. People on the left are like, well, you're demonizing trans people. Why would you do that? You're horrible. Guess what? There are monsters in this world. Predators know how to manipulate. I spent 8 years in a strip club. I know me some predators, guys. I hung out with them. I watched them in action. I had to be on guard all the time because I knew that 99% of the guys I hung out with were perfectly cool, but every once in a while, the strip club is a dark place. It's the entrance to the underworld. There's some really shady shit that can go on down there. I know predators. They're real. They exist. They will manipulate a system. When there's a little bit of leeway for them to manipulate it, they will manipulate it, and they are actively manipulating it. If we bury our heads in the sand and pretend that's not happening, we're just lying to ourselves. We're kicking the can down the road. Things are going to get worse. People are going to get hurt. People are going to get killed. How long do you want to delay that conversation? Because the longer you put it off, the worse things are going to get, and the conversation eventually, sooner or later, must happen. However, not all trans people are predators. Not all autogynephiles are predators. Not all autoandrophiles are predators. We need to have that little bit of nuance, like that absolutely must be in there in that conversation, because there are way too many people who are not, honestly, I don't think they're capable of nuance. I don't think they're capable of really being particularly rational. And I'm kind of horrified sometimes when I look at the comments that I've gotten in these last few days, because a part of me wonders how many people in this world are not thinking. How many people are just reacting? Like, do you know what that happens when that happens? This happens. This happens. It's terrifying to me. You know, I'm not afraid of a lot of things. There are a lot of scary things that I'm not afraid of. This is scary. And I look at it and it's like, okay, hypothetically, any human being can fall into this pattern of thought. You know, it's wonderful to say humans are rational, but humans are not rational. A human being alone on their own can be rational. Multiple human beings are very prone to a herd mentality. What do you do with that? I don't even know. But I do know that we have to be very careful when we have these discussions, because I think there is a growing contingent of people in this world who are just sick to the back teeth of the trans conversation. And here's my rainbow pride flag, and you know, I wanna shove my pronouns in your face and make you say them. They're sick of it. And they should be. It's coercive behavior. I'd be sick of it if somebody tried that shit with me. It's ridiculous. But at the same time, not all trans people are doing that. It's very hard to find a group of people that is uniformly predatory and bad. Autoandrophilia or autogynephilia, it is not inherently harmful to other human beings. It's part of a group of people that produces a lot of problems. And that is something we need to talk about. But I'm really kind of just very, very cautious, because I'm afraid there's going to be a time when people start having that knee-jerk reaction of, if you're a troublemaker, you must be an autogynephile. I had that knee-jerk reaction. You know, I've sat there for the longest time. It's like, well, I don't want to look at autoandrophilia. I don't even want to consider autoandrophilia for me. Like, is that what's going on? I don't want to go down that road because those people are all perverts, right? And I mean, it's a horrifying concept. Am I a pervert? Is that what I am? Is that what's going on? I don't know how to say this, but we need to be able to have a nuanced conversation. We need to be able to speak gently to one another. And we need to be able to enter into some of these conversations from a very logical, non-emotional point of view. We have to be able to shut off the emotions for a little while and approach these things logically and reasonably. I feel like I'm asking for something impossible. But I think it's vitally important that we at least try. So, sorry about the long video, guys. I'm going to try and shorten it down a bit for you because I know it's too long. And I hope you are all well, and I will talk to you guys later.